This is Dead Serious, a show about short horror stories worthy of discussion. I'm Dead Palette, the reason that @ReaperNames has over 15,000 followers. Today, we're taking a look at The Condemned IPod. I'm excited. Let's get right into it. I like to start off by saying, never trust anything but the 100% name brand official seller. I've learned this lesson the hard way. A way that no one should ever have to endure. Let me tell you my story. It was a nice day. No rain or snow or anything of that nature. It was midsummer, and it was showering. Temperatures in the mid-90s. Being a 14-year-old kid that I was into what everyone was referring to as the electronic age. I had no cell phone, no 52-inch plasma HD TV. The only thing I was lucky enough to eventually save up enough money for was a PS3. The only reason I chose the PS3 was because it provided a free online service. Money was wasn't something I could be throwing around away like it was nothing. Another thing I should add is that I was incredibly tech savvy. I was fluent in computer coding, building and restoration of computers and technology, such as iPods and iPhones, Nintendo DS, etc. I was always looking for new projects, and I had even advertised myself as a technology repairman. It came to me as no surprise whenever I had friends come up to me with their broken cell phones and a 3DS to ask me to fix them. So I like the beginning premise of this. The whole, only go through the official channels kind of thing. That's, you're dealing with the underbelly of, maybe there was some unseedy person selling these products, these iPods that are not, perfectly up to code and everything. That is a believable thing. Let's see how this pans out. Also, we're getting a good idea of who our narrator is. Our narrator is tech savvy. They are probably of lower economic means, probably. The kind of person who would advertise their, skills that they have as a 14-year-old. I can repair stuff. Maybe you throw a little bit of change my way. That's giving us a good idea of who our narrator is, and that's going to be important. I was happy with what I did. It was how I saved money, and I liked my job, so to speak. Like they say, if you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life. So, I continued on doing what I did. It wasn't until I came across one object that scarred me for life, and that I never wanted to touch another piece of technology again. God, have mercy on your soul. God have mercy on your soul, should you ever come into contact with what I did. Okay, narrator, you're being a little overbearing. Even if all of this is true, you haven't done anything to justify us feeling that there is that much dread around whatever it was you came into contact with. Again, you're kind of selling us on this idea before we've, you're upselling us. Let the thing, whatever it is, horrify us. Don't tell us to be horrified. The only reason I found this item was because of what I was doing. I not only fixed things for other people, I fixed damaged things people were selling for pennies on the dollar and kept them for myself. A wise investment, which saved me literally hundreds if I got the right deals. So, when I saw a 2 gig iPod Touch on eBay, claiming minor damage such as a broken LCD screen, and needing a new battery, it wasn't anything new for me to pay the $20 they were asking for. It wasn't until I started tinkering with it that I knew just what I had gotten myself into. So with this paragraph, we could have effectively cut out the last 2 sentences before it about the object scarring us and God have mercy on my soul and all of that. This is doing a much better job of setting up the story. It is foreshadowing that something bad is going to happen with his iPod, telling us how it can happen, because you're going to get these unseedy products, these broken products, and fix them up for a profit. That's wonderful. Don't tell us that it scarred your soul, and we'll never touch technology again. We don't need to hear that. We just need to hear the story, and this is the story, not those 2 sentences. I was an impatient kid. I hated waiting, and if I could find any way that I could get my hands on something quickly, I'd do it. So I paid for express shipping, and you know what? I got the son of a bitch in 2 days. I planned ahead and express ordered a new LCD screen and a battery off Amazon. The total project was about $50 with all the new parts in it, so I didn't mind because it saved me about $150. Okay, if you are of low economic means and money's tight and you're in that sort of situation, are you really going to pay to have a broken iPod 2 gigs sent to your house? Express mail, that seems a little out of character, and maybe it wouldn't be a problem if you mentioned that. It's like, hey, I was a very impatient kid, and even though money was tight, I had this thing express mailed to us. That would save this situation, and maybe say like, oh, I regret, having done that because it was really impulsive of me. That seems a little out of character for the character that we've had established. First things first, I got out my toolkit, popped off the broken LCD, replaced it in a snap, put in the new battery, and in less than 20 minutes, I had myself an almost brand new iPod. Curious as hell, I decided to see what the guy selling it on eBay had on the iPod. Grave mistake. So in the icon for this, the picture that they have on the Creepypasta Wikia, there is a picture of a broken iPod. I like that, and now I'm starting to understand. I should have not been so blind as to not see where the story is going. So whatever it is that is on this iPod made the person selling it crack the thing in anger, like, uh-oh, that thing is demonic, I better break it, and then they sold it on eBay. That is a cool idea. Let's see if that's actually where this story goes, and hope that whatever demonic thing is on this iPod is really cool and believable and conforms to my super specific expectations of what a creepypasta is and should be. The biggest pain in the ass is connecting the iPod to iTunes to turn the iPod back on. So I dug through my cable box, doing numerous jobs can get you a nice little box of handy cables, and put out a 30-pin connector. I plugged the USB end into my computer, the other end into the iPod, and hooked it up. The guy had it named Jared. Nothing too skeptical. It was something just the name of the guy who had sold the iPod. It was probably just the name of the guy who sold the iPod. Wrong wording there. Nothing too skeptical? You mean that I wasn't too skeptical about that? I wasn't too curious about that? That's a weird way to phrase that. Nothing too skeptical. It was probably just the name of the guy who sold me the iPod. That doesn't necessarily make any sense. Maybe it's one of those things where it's supposed to be the spoken word sounds different than the written word. But let's press on. I let iTunes do its thing. Oh my god, Brandon. It didn't take long before the iPod was fully functioning again. I almost panicked when I hit the unlock screen, but for some reason, there was no passcode lock on it. Lucky for me, he had a black lock screen background and a pentagram drawn in what looked like blood for the icon background. Creepy as fuck, right? That turned out to be the least of my worries. The iPod had been jailbroken, so it came as no surprise when I saw numerous apps that were, well, illegal. Man, I really hope that pentagram thing is justified in some way, because that's pretty corny. I think that whenever you put fake horror, very plasticky Halloween story kind of stuff, into your story, later on, you better justify it in some way. That misleading and delegitimizing of the real horror better be worth it later on, and I really hope that the story justifies that. But the idea of the iPod being hacked and everything, that way you could put illegal stuff on it, a completely realistic thing to have had happened. He had put a specific code lock on one of the folders on the iPod. It had one app in it that couldn't make out the picture to, with it being in a folder. The folder was titled Stowaway, in all caps. Puzzled and already creeped out by the unnerving background of the iPod, I decided to look through the documents he had stored on it before I completely wiped the thing's memory. He had that one app from Cyndia that allowed you to delve into the iPod's hard drive and mess with the actual files in it. You know, iFile. I shoved it off until later and headed for his photos/videos. But our, narrator here, our author here, we already know that you're going through these files because you're curious, and I think a lot of people in the same position would be doing the same thing. So it's not, all that weird that you would already be curious. You don't have to justify your curiosity to us. We would be curious too, right? I think every average person in this situation would be curious and would be dicking around in the files and everything. But you're telling us that, you were unnerved by the background. Come on, dude. No, it's a pentagram. It's just a pentagram. Are you like some uptight Catholic school teacher? Like, this is devil worship. Like, no, it's just a pentagram, right? You wouldn't be unnerved by that. Come on. And I had to check on this, but Cydia is apparently something that you use to jailbreak iPods. So you learn something every day. I've never been an Apple person, so I didn't know about this. Alright. There were approximately 12 photos in 2 videos. That's a weird approximation. Every picture in both videos were the exact same thing. It was a little girl, probably about 8 years old in age. The pictures were heartless, gut-wrenching, and downright awful. The first picture, and all the way through to the last picture, showed her being dismembered, piece by piece. The first photo showed her fingers cut off, then her toes, feet, hands, arms, legs. The last photo was a picture of her head, various symbols cut into it that I couldn't make out, even after studying them for a good 5 minutes. I was at the verge of puking and just throwing this thing away when I remembered the 2 videos. Seeing the pictures in the thumbnail, I had a pretty good feeling of what was in those 2 videos. Taking a deep breath, and after getting a glass of water, I started the video on a low volume. It began with the same girl as before, unharmed and looking pretty as a doll. Her face went from a slight smile to an unnerving glare, and she slowly began to sit down. She sat cross-legged, leaning her head back and stretching her arms out, saying the one thing I will never forget in an almost staticky, growly voice. Gloria Satanas, El Balal, El Sitio, Spiritio Malosa. Okay, so the puking is a bit much. Like, I've used puking in stories. Puking is cool. It's a very natural reaction to disgust, and it's a way to show that your narrator or character, whoever, is disgusted. But you can't. I feel like it's not built up to here. It's just like they, were severing a bunch of stuff, and it made me want to throw up. It's a very expected response. From that, it just kind of feels like because you're forcing yourself to view through these images, you would probably stop before you got to the point where you would make yourself throw up. Whatever it is that's making you throw up has to be unavoidable. Are you like going out of your way to throw up? Like, oh, this is gross. I better keep looking at these pictures and videos to make sure I throw up. That just seems a little nonsensical. Also, these images are, things that could just be made up footage. Again, it doesn't necessarily need to be real in this situation. It could just be videos that have been doctored that are nonsense, that are movies being made by someone, photoshopped images being put onto this iPod. It feels like this is going to say that these things have to be real somehow. You know what I mean? I hope that that's not the case. The video ended with her arms bleeding, razor-like cuts running down them and down her sides. I was terrified at this point. I had just witnessed a girl practically be taken over by Satan. I had to see the second video, though. I had to. Summoning my courage, I selected the second video with a grimace. The clip started with her body in a pentagram. There was a man in the video this time, and the point of view was overhead so that you could see everything happening. It finally came together in my head. It was a satanic sacrificing. I wasn't very familiar with satanic rituals, but I knew the gist of them. The photos were basically stills of what happened during the second video. He spoke softly in Latin, his voice peaking on certain tones when he said something that worked out, that as he worked. He cut her fingers off in a rather gruesome way, blood splattering onto the ground and on him, as he used the meat cleaver on the point where the fingers and the palm met. He did it to each and every one of her fingers, then to each of her toes. He cut off her hands and feet in the same manner. He then took it down a more gruesome path that I had a hard time watching and comprehending. Yeah, you were about to puke, dude. Come on. I was also extremely surprised at how the girl took it. She didn't squirm or anything. He removed her arms and her legs in a truly satanic way. He took a scalpel and tore down into the flesh, cutting all the way down until he hit the bone. Then he would run the knife from the shoulder all the way down to the point where her hand was cut off, and give his best attempt at removing the flesh and muscle to leave just the bone. He did it to all 4 of her appendages, blood everywhere at this point. She was well beyond the point of death, and her body was nothing more than a sacrifice to Satan. He cut down her midsection, starting at her chest and ending at her crotch, peeling open the newly formed flaps to reveal her innards. He removed her stomach, liver, intestines, and pancreas, setting them aside in a pan. He continued on with this hellish work. Okay, so I'm not sure how to feel about this gore myself. Rather than say my opinion on this gore, I want to know in the comment section, if you're listening to this, rate your squeamish level. How squeamish are you? Do you get squeamish easily? Are you very easy to disgust? And after telling me that, tell me, did this gross you out? Because I'm genuinely not sure. I am probably somewhere on the middle on the squeamish thing, on the squeamish scale. Certain things will make me squeamish. Nothing in this makes me squeamish per se, but it's just not doing it for me. But I don't know that it's good or bad. I want to know your opinion. Is this gore not justified? Because I think it's justified. It's important. It's kind of the crux of the story at this point. But is it working as making you squeamish? Continuing on. He took a black marker, drew a line running across her neck, and picked up a wood-cutting axe. He tilted her head back to reveal her throat, and gave a good few test swings glazing her throat, and then, with a grunt, swung the axe down precisely on the line, decapitating her. The sound was indescribably horrifying and sickening. It sounded like, it was like the sound of an animal being run over. You can hear the sound of every bone crushing and the muscle tearing. It was a guttural sound, and it was like nothing short of a literal bloodbath. She had almost all of the blood in her body from the tissue muscle removed during the attack on her arms and legs, and she still managed to spurt a decent amount of blood from the slump where her head used to be. He tossed the lifeless midsection away and held up the decapitated head to the camera, shouting Lucifer's prayer in Latin. Alright, so we have 3 paragraphs left after this. I really hope that we explain how the iPod is the thing that's condemned, because at this point there's nothing necessarily supernatural or obscene or whatever about the iPod itself, just the things on it. I was done at this point. I closed the video, deleted the 12 pictures and the 2 videos, went to iFile and deleted every trace of that shit from the iPod, and I shuddered. It wasn't until I looked closer at the icon background that I noticed it was the girl being sacrificed. I attempted to change it. Believe me, I tried. I deleted every godforsaken file using iFile, loaded it onto iTunes, and even factory restored it, but it was almost like the background had been physically glued to the screen. At this point, I said fuck it. I didn't even bother salvaging the parts. I got rid of that fucking thing. All right, so I think we had a step forward and a step back in this paragraph. So, oh my god, we actually justified our ridiculous pentagram, didn't we? It turns out that the pentagram was carved into the little girl. That's good. I like that. The idea that the thing that makes you throw this away is that you can't get rid of that image is a little silly to me. Like, this thing was condemned. I couldn't change the background image. That is a little corny to me. So, points for the idea. I think it's an original idea of, like, this was a cheap idea of a bloody pentagram, and then it turns out that it was, like, carved on a little girl that was decapitated. That's good. I like that. I did the traditional way of getting rid of anything I needed to get rid of. I took it apart, piece by piece, and burned it. No, I didn't mean burn the battery, but I sure as hell didn't keep it after knowing it was in contact with whatever was inside the iPod that was unholy as Lucifer himself. I burned what I could to ash and smithereens, disposing of the metal casing in the garbage. The battery was properly disposed of, but the memory still remained. Ash to ash, dust to dust, fade to black. Memory remains. Okay. I thought I had gotten rid of the damn thing. I hoped that it was gone. I burned it and had it industrially crushed. Jesus Christ, dude, that's overboard. But that didn't change the fact that I had connected the damn thing to my computer. Guess what my PC background is now? Alright. That's a good ending. I like that ending. Alright. Okay, that idea, which I thought was kind of cheap and corny, I think you've justified it here. So that's one step back, then one step forward, and then one step back, and then one step forward. I like this ending. This is a really stupid name for a creepypasta, and I thought it was going to be all shits and giggles, and it certainly has its problems. But this story, above average, really kind of an interesting story that we got here. I am going to say that I am looking at the condemned iPod in favorable light. It's maybe a bit idealistic, a bit more romantic, and I mean romantic in the terms of romanticism, the art movement, than what you would expect from creepypasta. But again, I have very strict judgment on what is and isn't creepypasta. Judging the story for what it is, it's pretty goddamn cool. Let me know what you think in the comments. Let me know if there's something stupid about this story that I'm missing. Let me know if there is something else in this story that makes it even better that I am missing. I want to know what you think, and we do have a sponsor for today. Our sponsor is Leapfrog. Leapfrog Leapster GS Explorer. It factually has more games than the PS Vita.